Hey everyone, Duke Nukem 3D here with another especially hot piece of garbage from my collection. Today I have for you the very well-known and infamous Yugoslavian slash Serbian M1 gas mask. Now, the Yugoslavians and Serbians, whichever you prefer to call them, have a long trend of some very high quality military surplus, field equipment, uniforms, things of that nature. All their shit is typically good quality. But for whatever reason, this one particular mask, out of everything, seems to be their worst, to be honest. It's just every other mask that Yugoslavia and Serbia has produced has been very high quality, but this one, for whatever reason, is just, I guess, all of their bad luck was just focused into this one mask and to allow all their other masks to be good designs. But enough about that. The Serbian M1 was a direct clone of the American M9A1, which I believe it was copied under license and was introduced sometime during the late 1950s. It continued use up until, I believe, around the 1970s or further as a training mask when it began to get phased out with the M2 and later M2F, M2FV, and more recently the M3 series protective masks. But the M1 is very commonly found on the surplus market in unissued condition. However, they are more than likely the export ones, which are typically factory defects or just expired examples that were just unsuitable for military usage, so they were repackaged and shipped out to various countries. A majority of these masks went to Middle Eastern countries such as Iraq and Iran, where they saw plenty of service during the first Gulf War, and I'm sure plenty of other skirmishes and war on terrorism activities shortly after. And as mentioned, they are very plentiful on the surplus market, and they used to be had for around $20 or so. I think they've gone a little up in price, but they're still hanging around. Sadly, not as much as the M2s. Actually, no, vice versa. These are more common than the M2s, sadly, which I honestly wish it was the other way around. The M2s are a lot better, and if you're considering a Serbian mask, get one of those, definitely. But as far as I know, there are two known variants of the M1, which is the MC1, which obviously is the civilian variant, which lacked a nose cup and had MC1 printed boldly on the side of the facepiece. It was also issued with a different carrier as well that was boxy shaped and open from the top rather than an M11 carrier copy. And then there was the M65, which not really known as much about it. However, it is an export produced variant of the M1 that is manufactured with black lens frames for whatever purpose. But that's about it, really. The M1 had a relatively decent lifespan, and for what it's worth, is a very decent copy of the M9A1. It is probably one of the most accurate M9 clones out there. However, its construction and materials are what fails it every time. But we'll get into that in a second. First, let's start off with the carrier. The carrier is easily the highest quality item in this set, being made out of a very rugged gray canvas, just very beautiful materials. And honestly, I think the clips that they use on the M1 carriers are a bit better than the US designs, to be honest, because I see a ton of I've seen examples of US carriers with the clips breaking on them, whereas with these you don't really see these breaking. They just corrode, I guess. You have some markings on the flap here with the 3 lifted dots to open it. Yeah, that's basically a serial code. I don't think that contains the date or anything. There are no markings on the opposite side. However, it is for pretty much overall externally an exact copy of the US M11 carrier for the M9A1 mask. Inside, you have a Made in Serbia stamp. This is typical when you're coming across export examples. Inside the carrier, you can see a large pocket here, which has no backing to it, just a strap, which is meant to hold the set of chemical gloves normally issued with this mask, which I do not own. And this pocket right here that is inside of it is meant to hold the anti-fogging and cleaning cloths and factory bag and whatnot. Attached to the glove pocket, there is a separate plug for the filter. Opposite, on the other side of the carrier, you have the pocket for the LPD kit, which I have with me. I'll get to in a moment. And there is also a strap on the very back of the carrier here. I'm not sure what this is for, but it is there. Moving on. Here we have the bag that the mask comes in. It's a factory bag. It's kind of yellowed and stained. Nothing really to say about it, just a cheap plastic bag. Here we have the face form for the mask, which is honestly kind of one of the worst face forms I've ever seen in my entire life. It is made out of the cheapest quality cardboard possible, and it has pretty much a big chunk of styrofoam put in a plastic bag inside this thing, and that is a big no-no when it comes to gas masks. This is the worst possible combination that you could have to store these masks in, and I believe that's why so many of these are failing. It's because of prolonged exposure to plastic and styrofoam, in addition to the poor quality rubber they're made of. Here's the filter for the M1. It is a direct copy of the US M11 canister, painted in olive drab green. You have the serial stamps there, and then you have the plug on the bottom and a screw-off cap. These are 60 millimeter. And next up here we have the bag containing the anti-fogging and cleaning cloths. I believe the larger of the two is the cleaning cloth. The smaller of the two is the the anti-fogging cloth, which just came out of its little sleeve there, so give me a moment. And then finally you have the manual leaflet, which is probably the most amusing part of this kit, other than the quality itself, because of just the poor mistranslations all over it, such as, let's see here, let's see step number 2 here. Face mask, rubber mask with elastic strips to be tightened behind the head together with protection glasses. I'm not sure if they mean wearing glasses underneath the mask or if it means the actual lenses on the mask. Either way, there's just a ton of mistranslations here. For another one, color, olive drab. I'm sure plenty of you have seen this before. A lot of people own the Serbian M1, so you kind of know what I'm talking about right off the bat. Just kind of amusing. A lot of Serbian military surplus comes with cheap, poorly translated manual leaflets such as that. And finally, yeah, I have a piece that doesn't normally come with the military M1 sets. This is typically found with the MC1 kits, but these were issued with the M1 as far as I know. This is the Model 1 LPD kit, which is a general purpose personal decontamination and antidote kit. It's built similarly to the United States M5A1 protective ointment and atropine kit, which I do have one of. I think I've shown it off in a video before. It has the instructions printed on it of how to use the different things inside. And opening it up, you can see there is some absorbent tissue paper for blotting off mustard agents, blister agents, liquid chemical agents, things like that. You have this tab here. This says pull in Serbian, I believe. You pull this up, and you have this cardboard sleeve, which has a bottle of, I believe, Fuller's Earth wrapped with more absorbent tissue paper. You have 2 atropine syrettes inside this tube here, wrapped in plastic, obviously. Then you have these, which contain, one of which contains some sort of powder, I believe, and the other is blood agent antidote capsules. And then you have some cotton wadding here, which I assume is also for blotting. And it's a very nice chemical, a personal decontamination and antidote kit. These are very nice kits, and I wish a lot more personal decon kits were like these. They're just so neat. I absolutely love the LPD Model 1. These were later replaced with the LPD Model 3, which was just a foil package that contained just a weird cloth mitten that was impregnated with some decontamination clay, as they describe it. And without further ado, let's get on to the golden shit pile of this kit, which is the mask itself. The rubber is a very odd choice of color, in my opinion. Most Serbian masks, at least the M1 and the M2, are made out of this very weird aqua turquoise-ish colored rubber, which doesn't really seem fitting for any military-issued mask, but nonetheless they chose it anyways. With the M1, it is very poor quality and very, very prone to melting around the rivets. So if you plan on buying one of these, I'd always check around the inside where the rivets are attached, because that is usually where they fail first. And I've seen examples, like even one in person at my surplus store, where the rivets will just completely tear through the edge of the rubber, and it will be just toast. And there's no way to reverse this either. Once it starts going, it's going. And luckily mine hasn't shown any signs of melting yet, so I'm just trying to keep it as preserved as possible. The 60mm threads are another bad feature of this mask because they are so heavily coated in this cheap lacquer that it makes it impossible to achieve a proper seal with the filter because it is constantly grinding the metal and causing gaps. So another poor design aspect on that part. The tape covering the wire holding the valves on, it also has very weak adhesive and is prone to coming off. The outlet valve, which is a copy of the C15 obviously, has a plastic valve seat, so not as durable as an M9A1, but it's good for what it needs to be. You have the serial stamp on the side of the face piece, as you can see here. I have not yet been able to come up with a date for this particular example. I originally thought it was dated 1990 based on the serial code, but as far as I know, the only way to date these masks properly is with a military issue leaflet that comes with, obviously, not the export ones, but the military issued examples. So, unfortunately for me, this being a export version, I do not have that leaflet. So, once again, I do not have a date on this mask. Excuse me, bump the camera here. You can see the markings here. M59, which is actually the original designation for this mask. That is its alternate designation, M59. However, later it was renamed the M1. Then you have a V here, which is the it's the initial for the Serbian word meaning large. So V is a size large. You can go ahead and check out my Serbian M2 review, and somebody already dropped the descriptions of Serbian size markings in the comments. Moving around to the head harness, it is a very basic copy of the C8 style head harness. Very decent elastic. The head pad is somewhat of a weird it's not even duck canvas. It feels like carpet almost. It's not carpet, but it's like a material you'd expect to be backing carpet, and it's very weird, but really no complaints there. It has an interesting texture to it as well. It has a nape strap just like the M9A1 where they lift the dot, and so this is a 100% exact clone, at least in terms of its construction and details, not its materials. And then finally, I'll go to the inside, quickly show that off, and then wrap up the video for you here because this isn't really a mask that's all that interesting. But nonetheless, it's one that I own, and I'm trying to show off every mask in my collection that I own here. So here's the inside of the mask. Very, very cozy, just like you'd expect an M9A1 to be. There's still plenty of flashes left on the rubber, as you can see, and it's just overall very cheaply produced, but it's decent for what it needs to be. You can see the oronasal cup starting to overlap the valve seat a little bit in the corner here because of how sloppily this was glued in place. Peeling back the nose cup, I don't believe there are any markings. Usually M9s would have a stamp somewhere in the nose pocket here. Everything works as it should, except for, the threads, which are too heavily coated with lacquer to achieve any proper seal, as I've mentioned. And it has texturing, not as prominent texturing as the M9A1, but enough texturing to be noteworthy. That's pretty much it. Very interesting mask. Excuse me, bumped the camera again. I gotta stop doing that. And if you're planning to pick one of these up, just be aware of the risks that are present with these masks due to its poor construction and poor quality materials. So I would not buy one of these masks to use. Obviously, I wouldn't even buy it to fool around with. This is something that I would personally just buy to have in your collection and keep on display and not ever use or wear, because these masks are very fragile and are very prone, like I said, very prone to falling apart just out of the blue. So, but anyhow, that is my Serbian M1. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and I will get to them when I can. So, see you later.